Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Tell Your Story. My name is Todd Nesloni, and I'm the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership at TEPSA. And each episode, I look to bring you a different guest who has encouraged, inspired, or challenged me in one way or another, and bring them on to share some of their story in hopes that it inspires you to tell some of yours. I'm so excited today to talk to my special guest, Silvana Spence. Silvana, thank you so much for being here. Tell everybody kind of who you are.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Todd, for having me. As he said, my name is Silvana Spence. I am originally from Brazil, and I'm in early childhood education. I teach first grade in Jacksonville, Florida, and I got my education in early childhood education, my bachelor's in FIU because I used to live in Miami,
Uh-huh.
and I got my master's in curriculum and instruction.
Awesome. Well, Savannah, I want to start with whenever I interview an educator, I always like to wonder, like, when you were growing up, what did you want to be? Did you always know it was going to be a teacher, or did you kind of learn that later down the road?
Well, first I thought doctor, and then doctor and teacher. But teacher prevailed.
Yeah.
And for my very first job, my very first major was in advertisement in communications. But my very first job was as a teacher. So I would go to school for communications, but I was working in a school. And everybody would start saying to me, I think you better change your major because you're a teacher. So later on in life, I did change my major, and I got my early childhood, my bachelor's in early childhood. But I think the teaching was always there.
Yeah.
I absolutely love education. I love teaching. I think it's has its challenges,
Of
but
course.
it's a breath of fresh air,
Yeah.
at least for me.
And so when you were moving over to the idea of being a teacher full time, were you always drawn to elementary education?
Yeah, I actually started as an ESOL educator. So most of my career was teaching English as a second language. And so when I switched to early childhood to teach elementary, it was very different because I was not focused on just one subject. I had to teach everything. So that was a little bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
But since the passion was so much, I was just so excited to do it. I said, it's okay. Let's do this.
I love that. So, now being a teacher for a little bit, what do you feel like is something you've really learned about yourself through teaching?
I think I'm very persistent.
Mm.
You have to be very persistent because things don't really work exactly the way you want all the time. People don't always understand your style all the time, and you cannot stop the show because other people don't understand you because
Right.
you are there for the kids.
Right.
Adults might not understand your style, but if the kids are happy and they are learning, keep moving. Later on, they will get sometime.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that you were born in Brazil. So when did you move to the United States?
21 years ago.
Uh,
Yes, I started teaching in Brazil.
oh, really?
A long time.
So what brought you to
Yes,
the
that's
United
where
States then?
I came because I was teaching English there. So I said,
Mhm.
oh, let's go to the States to improve English. And I never came.
I love
And
that.
that was
Well,
it.
so, my question then is, when I talked to somebody else from another country recently, and they said that when they were growing up, it's so normal to learn multiple languages in school. Did you learn multiple languages while you were growing up in school?
Yeah, well, it was like this. We had the same way people have Spanish here as a resource or other languages in school. Over there, we would have Spanish and English. Not like in elementary school, we would only have Spanish. Later on in college, like 20 years ago, because of Mercosur and because of the trade amongst the countries, then
Mhm.
they start implementing Spanish and the higher education. So in school we had English, and I absolutely loved it. And I had a sister that was fluent in English. And I just thought it was
Uh-huh.
so beautiful the way she spoke. And I said, oh, I want to speak English too. And I start practicing, by myself. Then I join an English school, an English course. And the teacher, and then one day I asked the teacher, say, hey, do you think I could teach one day? And she said, yes. And then I think a month later, I was teaching at that same place. So in one classroom, I was a student. I would get out, put a jacket on with the logo
Mhm.
of the school, and teach in the next classroom. So that's how everything
Wow.
started.
I love that. And and now you get to be a whole new kind of teacher with the whole COVID and learning to teach from home and being a virtual teacher. And so what has been the hardest shift for you in this new environment?
I think is to get the kids engaged and comfort the kids because they want to go to school, they want to see their friends. And they kept asking me, are we going to see each other, and I had to really keep together not to cry and say
Yeah.
yes. I We're going to be seeing each other online now, and you don't have no control of
Yeah.
what's going to happen, and you still have to come up to comfort them, to make the lessons fun and engaging, and to see the time frame, the teaching, because it's a new venture. They are learning through online, and they were not even trained for that.
Right.
So if their attention span is short in the classroom, imagine with a computer when they are inside their home. It's kind of confusing to them. I'm in my house,
Yeah.
but I have to sit here and listen to you. Bloop. No, I'm leaving the meeting. And then you're like, bloop, no, come back.
Well, Silvana, you're
So
also
it's a
quite.
it's a new challenge, but it can be done. It's stressful because there's a lot to learn in one time.
Hmm. Yeah, and I completely agree. I think that's what I'm hearing again and again is that, this was just so much to consume at one time for teachers to just flip how they do everything. And so, bravo to you for the work that you're doing. But, shifting gears just a little bit, I also know that you're quite active on social media. And so, when did you get to that point where you felt brave enough to start sharing your own ideas out there on social media?
I actually started doing that when I opened an account. So I have a friend of mine that is an illustrator, and she was like, well, if you want to start kind of, because I'm an aspiring children's author. And she
Mhm.
said, well, Instagram would be best for you, and it would be nice for you to share your ideas. And some of my coworkers were really motivating me to open an account. I was like, I don't know about that. She's like, it's simple. Just open an account and post what you do with the kids. It's good. It's good ideas. So because of friends and other educators, I start little by little sharing, the ideas of what I was doing in the classroom. And then shortly after, I became the teacher of the year when I was just starting. So I said, okay, me just little by little put the videos with the kids because I love it so much. And they kept motivating me. Go ahead, put it on there because that's really good stuff. I was like, okay.
I love that. Well, Silvana, did you ever reach that point though, where, sometimes with the prevalence of social media, we can kind of, and we talk about this quite often on Tell Your Story, we can kind of get these doubts to creep in or these comparisons where we don't feel like our stuff's good enough to be out there or we should be sharing on social media. And so how do you battle those thoughts when they come into your own head about you being good enough to share on social media?
Well, I my faith is huge because
Mhm.
I at one point I do compare myself, and then when I'm getting to that comparison lane, I try to get out as fast as possible. And this is the thought that I keep in mind: the portion that God has for me is
Mhm.
not the same portion that He has for someone else. That person is shining that light. That's the light that God reserved for her or for him. They are successful in this because that's their portion. They work to get there, and I will rejoice with them. So my portion will come when God determines that it will come for me in the time that He knows that I'm ready. So that really eases the pressure that every now and then comes when you see somebody do something amazing and you're not doing as amazing as you might, but maybe that what you're doing, it's enough for the kids that you are working with or the people that you are impacting in your life.
You know,
So
I
it's just like looking at what somebody's doing is to rejoice with them, not to be jealous of what they're doing.
I love that, and I think that is such beautiful advice for everybody to hear because I'm such a believer too that we are better when we cheer each other on and when we build each other up than when we try to get negative or comparison thief or those other kind of things. So I love that you said that right there. Well, Silvana, I always like to look at our own lives and where we've come from and the joys, the trials, the successes, the failures. And so when you reflect at your own life and your own things that you've been through, what is something that really stands out that you think was really instrumental into creating the woman we see today?
One is faith, because if you don't believe, you cannot get anywhere. You have to believe, and sometimes you have to believe things that you don't see yet. But you have to keep moving. You have to have faith. Passion is like and push you and move forward. If you're not passionate, how are you going to get up every day to do amazing things? Or how are you going to get up every day?
Right.
I'm just getting up, doing life. So those are things that are really like important to me. I need to be passionate about what I'm doing, even though the day is not so great because it's not shiny every day,
Mhm.
right? Sometimes,
Yep.
but I have to look at the rain as the rain is to put that water on the soil that will flourish someday.
I
Not to drown me.
I love that. I love that just thinking about the rain and the hard times being a time that's watering the soil and like you said, not drowning you, but watering the soil. I think that's such a beautiful analogy and way to look at it. I want to shift gears here a little bit and go back to, you've worked a lot with ESOL students, and so students who speak languages other than English. And so what do you feel like is one of the biggest things that you would want educators to know about students who are learning English and learning these other languages and ways that they can really work with those students?
One, learn their name, say
Mhm.
their name properly, because you don't want somebody to say your name wrong. So pronounce their name with the sound of their language. Your
Mhm.
name is powerful, is your name. So learn their name, say their name. Don't give them a pet name, say their name. There's a
Yeah.
power in the name. And if you learn a little bit of their language, it's not going to hurt you. It's actually fun. It might be hard for other people to learn different languages, but just use Google Translate something. Show that you care, that you're there for them,
Yeah.
and find a lot of visual strategies, because when you don't, as English is my second language.
Mhm.
So, for example, when I speak to someone, I read your lips.
Mhm.
Even if I already know the language, but I look at your lips, because if I miss a bit, I already read your lips. I know what you're saying. If the
Right.
sound goes bad, I read your lips. So pronounce the words, articulate the words very well, because they are going to rely on visual a lot.
Yeah.
Use a lot of visuals. I use a lot of music and movement. And I
Mm.
try to make associations with the music and the movement for them to bring meaning to what they're learning. So really dive in to help them, to understand and to learn this beautiful language, not to be traumatic to them because they are afraid.
Mhm.
I remember one time this teacher that I was in kindergarten, and she was frightened. She came to my class and she said, "I have a kid that she speaks Portuguese. I know you do. I don't know what to do with her. She doesn't even look at me." I was like, "Okay, I'm coming." So I went to watch my class and I went over there. The kid was so afraid.
Yeah.
She was like ducked in and she wouldn't look around. And I said her name and she would still not look around. And I was speaking in Portuguese with her. It took her at least a minute or two
Right.
to process, like, hold on, that's my language. And she looked at me and I said, Oi, tudo bem? And a light came, because it's just such a joy when you hear your language, when somebody says at least oi or
Yeah.
whatever it is, a hi in your own language, you're like, you connect with that person, right?
Uh-huh.
So learn at least a hi or thank you. And I'll tell you that that will open up communication with parents. So they are going to feel so appreciated, and the kids are going to feel so valued and look at you as an educator in such a different way, that you care, you value their culture, you know. So I had parents to bring me samosas, you know. I had a parent to make a whole picnic, Indian picnic, right there in my class. I was like, hey, bring it over, let's do it, right? So you embrace their culture so they feel valued,
Yeah.
because everyone wants to feel valued.
And I love that so much. And I think all of that is such beautiful advice and great reminders for teachers as they're getting to know students and trying to connect with kids, especially kids who come into their class, like you said, and don't speak any of their language, and just finding that commonality. And I love what you said about pronouncing kids' names correctly. And
Mhm.
not like their pet names or anything like that, like their name, say it the way it was meant to be said. I think that's so important. Well, Silvana, one question I always love to end all these conversations on is, I believe as people, there are things that we hold really close to our hearts and who we are and what we believe. And so for everybody who may be listening or watching today, if they were to walk away with one thing, what would your one thing be?
Know your why
Mm,
you do it, because not every day is going to be a shiny or a sunny day in education. And some days you might think, I don't want to do this anymore, or somebody might be there to discourage you.
mhm,
But if you have that why so sure of your calling inside of you,
yeah,
even though the trials and tribulations will come, you will not leave it, but you will fight for it. You know, I had so many days that I was like, my gosh, I'm going to leave this. This is crazy. I don't want to do this anymore. But inside of me, I have so much love for it. I don't know why I have so much love for it, but I don't want to quit, but I want to quit. So I pray on it. And the next day, I'm already looking for things to do. So it's a calling.
yeah,
Understand your calling. Is that your calling? First, you need to know, is that your calling? Why you're doing this? Because you're not going to be rich in education, right? Unless you come up with a brilliant idea of a
yeah,
software or something, you might become. I don't know. But as a teacher, the money are the fame. So it's a lot of hard work, but the reward that you will harvest is in the love and the passion that you put into a person
yeah,
each and every day. And it might not just be the students, it might be your coworkers too.
mhm,
So you have to love it to do it, because there's no money like to satisfy you, there's another reason that will move you to do it. That
yeah,
is because you care about people.
yeah. I love that, Silvana. And that is such a beautiful way to end this conversation. Well, I was so excited when you agreed to chat. So thank you so much for coming on Tell Your Story today.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
And thank you, everybody, for listening or watching another episode of Tell Your Story. Remember, you can check out past episodes on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, wherever you get your stuff, it's there. I hope today's conversation with Silvana has encouraged you to get out there and tell your story, because every story matters.